You ready for some shaky cam? I already filmed a video like this with a different guitar, and my laptop died and couldn't get the footage back yet, so I thought I'd do it again. But basically, this is a bridge job in the middle of, well, just having been glued and set up to dry now. I'll let it dry the rest of the day. And a lot of you do this kind of stuff, so you know exactly what I'm going to talk about. And some of you, this is a step too far. This is something you would take to a luthier. You wouldn't try this yourself, and I don't blame you. It's all about confidence. I wouldn't try this unless you felt confident and trained somewhat in what you were doing, or if you had some basic woodworking skills. But anyway, each one of these jobs looks slightly different. A different combination of clamps. And that's because each sound hole is different, each bridge placement, bridge shape. Each job is different on these. So on this particular one, I've got the two wooden cam clamps holding down the middle section. Those are pressure clamps. And then two specially made bridge clamps on the wings, holding down the wings on the side, because this is a very ornately shaped bridge on this, and it has those ornate wings on it, so I needed clamps for the side. For a lot of bridges I use this thing, and what you do is you glue down this and clamp down this in the center, and then you screw the wing plates down, and that works really well for almost all bridges. It didn't quite work on this because of the shape of the bridge, and I needed to use the bridge pins to put the bridge in place on this particular one, so I didn't use it, but a lot of times I do. This is a very useful bridge coil that you can order, or something like it. You can see there the plates that screw down on the wings. So you glue the middle, and then you use these clamps on the side for the wings, but I didn't use it on this one. Most of the time on these jobs, I use Titebond. That's the original Titebond. It just is the glue that works for me for most jobs. There are occasions where I use hide glue, usually on higher end guitars. Like the last time I did I glued a bridge on a Yari. I used hide glue because I think that's what they use at the factory. I wanted to reproduce what they do. You can use fish glue as well. Used to make it in glue pots and use it almost extensively when I was in the violin repair business. So I'm used to working with hide glue. Now you can buy regular tubes of it and you can use it cold. However, I still think I still prefer to use the original version, the granules that you cook down into a glue and put it on hot. It's just the way I was taught and the way I like to apply it. But I worked with a violin maker a few years ago that used just regular hide glue in a glue tube, and he seemed to have good success with it. Very, very, very occasionally, and I wouldn't do this on an expensive guitar, I will use Gorilla Glue, the original Gorilla Glue, if I want something to absolutely stay permanent. So this would be something, say one of those 20, 30, 40, 50 quid guitar jobs where you need something to stay forever. I usually use those on snap necks, but occasionally I've done it, used it on a bridge where the underneath of the bridge had deteriorated, and I wanted a really, really strong glue to put it back together. I wouldn't do it on an expensive guitar or a guitar of any worth, though, because these things need to be able to come off. Somebody else might need to work on them, so you don't want to glue it permanently. This one here, I think, is a one from Stu Mac, and this is actually made for a bridge, and I think that actually came when I ordered this one, or I ordered them together. These cam clamps I got from this one right here is from the violin shop that I originally worked for, which is now no longer there, unfortunately. But I managed to get a few tools before I left from the owner. Bought a few tools from him, and I really like these old cam clamps. They're my favorites. I've got a few of those, as well as some old spool clamps as well. I've got a couple of these bar clamps here that I use for bridges. They're about the right size for bridges. So this is a pretty common assemblage, if you like, of clamps. Now these are just long enough to put in this sound hole with the back little portion resting on the fretboard. It just works perfectly, but it doesn't always go that way with every guitar bridge that I do. Sometimes they don't quite fit, sometimes they're a little short. In this case, with most dreadnoughts, they work really, really, really well, and they hold the bridge securely in place. Of course, you can see some residue on here because the glue squeezed out, and I use a little towel. I'm sorry for my voice, still recovering from COVID here, but I use a towel a little wet towel to clean out the squeeze out as much as possible. I like to clean the squeeze out as much as I can and leave myself less to do when I take the clamps off, particularly with white Titebond glue. I find with Titebond it's better if you clean as much as you can as you go. If you're using hide glue, it's water soluble, so if you leave a little mess behind, it's pretty easy to clean up with hot water. But with Titebond, I prefer to clean up as I go. Now, I use the original Titebond. I know there's Titebond 2. And, you know, each person will tell you differently, but I particularly prefer the original. It just, I don't know, it just seems to be the best, both to work with and also the strength that it has for most of these guitar jobs is perfect. It tacks up just about the right time, so you're working through a job and you start to feel it tack up, which holds whatever you're gluing in place while you get the clamps on. So it works really, really well. I've worked with faster glues. I really hate working with super glues or CA glues because they dry so quickly. You really have to have everything dry clamped and know exactly what you're doing. You don't have much time to complete a glue job. I have never used super glue for a bridge, ever. I don't know why you would, but there are people that say they do. And I really hate doing repairs where people have used super glue for things you're not supposed to use super glue on. And I know people use them to seat frets, and I think if you put a little squirt in the middle and you push a fret in, that's fine. I wouldn't glue the hole all the way along the fret. Same with when you hold the nut in place. Here, I've seen people use a dab of super glue in the middle just to hold the nut in. That's fine because you can tap it out, but don't glue the whole thing with super glue. You want these things to come out. You want them to come off. Even frets, if somebody wants to refret this guitar, you want them to be able to come out. You want the bridge to be able to be pried off. So don't use permanent glues and epoxies. I really, really hate it when I come across a guitar where somebody's done that. I recently did a bridge, actually on that terrible Encore guitar, where I think they used epoxy and screws. And it took me a long time to clean that epoxy off, both the face of the guitar and also the underside of the bridge. And I was cursing that person. Most people would have thrown that guitar in the bin. However, for me, it's just worth getting it back together if it'll go back together. Somebody can learn on it and it doesn't go in a landfill. And, I feel strongly about that. So I do repairs that other repair people won't do or wouldn't bother taking the time with. Ted Woodford wouldn't have taken on that guitar, not in a million years. But we're different kind of repair people, so it's good. We all have our place. He's too busy working on Martins and Taylors, so I don't begrudge him not having to work on an Encore. But anyway, this is a pretty typical clamp up glue job. I do use leather underneath the clamps as well. I try not to ever clamp anything without some sort of padding underneath it, because I've seen bridges scarred up. I've seen guitar tops scarred up from people not using any sort of mats or leather for clamping devices. So if you take the time just to do stuff like that, the finished product will be of better quality. But anyway, I just thought I'd show this sort of in clamps, a typical bridge glue job. Yeah, they're a pain. I would say the actual removing the bridge and then sanding both surfaces flat is the hardest part of it, usually because the manufacturers don't scrape the material under the bridge all the way to the line, which often causes bridges to come up easily. Even on this one, I would say a third of the bridge was over lacquered part of the guitar. So I had to take a little scalpel and scrape all the way to the line of where the bridge is going to go on the guitar, so that you get a complete glue joint from all sides of the bridge, and that it's absolutely flat surface to surface, so that it will adhere properly and not come up again. And that's probably the hardest part of this particular procedure, the actual gluing and clamping. You got to get it lined right, and of course with an acoustic guitar you can use your bridge pins to align the bridge to the guitar top. I would recommend pulling them out when you get it clamped up, though, because you don't want the pins to be glued in permanently. Or you can use, simply use what you call pin dowels, or tape to mark where the bridge is positioned on the guitar. All kinds of devices, but you don't want to glue it in ad hoc, because then your alignment from nut to bridge will be off, and your tuning will be out. So you want to make sure that you glue it back in the correct position, and there are various ways to do that. But anyway, here's a typical glue job, and thought I'd share it with you. So I'll take these clamps off tomorrow. I always let clamps sit overnight, no matter what glue I'm using. I just do. So I glue it up, and it doesn't matter what time of day. This will sit now in clamps until tomorrow morning when I get up and take them out. All right, folks. This is a Tanglewood, by the way. This is a Tanglewood Baby. I think it's a cedar top guitar. So we're going to get this firing again. It's a nice little Dreadnought solid cedar top model. All right, folks. See you next time.